for accepting our invitation and joining in for the program today. I formally welcome all the participants who have joined today this evening for our program. And of course, it is going to be a very enriching program on cold chain refrigeration that is lesser spoken about normally, but we are making conscious efforts to have more and more speakers on this topic, as this is currently the most important topic in the country, and we would definitely like to contribute to dissemination of knowledge on this topic. To formally introduce our speaker for the evening, Mrs. Aditi Surange is a BE in Computers from Pune University and a PGDM from Mumbai University. She has further completed an advanced leadership course from IIM Bangalore and cold chain course from Semaphore, Paris. Mrs. Aditi Surange, the head of consultancy development at ACR Projects Private Limited, Pune. The company is into consulting in the field of cold chain since 1971 and has under its belt more than 500 cold storage and cold chain projects. They promote green cold chain all over the world and is a pioneering company from India. Mrs. Aditi is a member of ISHRE Pune chapter. She has been the women chair of Pune chapter for 2018 and 19 and is currently the national IT vice chair. She has been instrumental in putting together many articles on cold chains in our ISHRE journal. We are very honored and obliged to have Mrs. Aditi with us today. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you again for accepting our presentation. To all the participants today evening, kindly keep your microphones on the mute and your videos off, as we would not require them now and we want good bandwidth. For any questions that you may have, kindly put it in the chat box. We are all looking at the chat box. I'm sure the speaker would be addressing all your questions. And if anything further doubt remains, you can share that through email and she would be answering that. Thank you, everyone. Over to you, Aditi ma'am.
Thank you, Nilanjana. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you, ISHRE Kolkata chapter, for having me over. It's a pleasure talking to you all and presenting on this very important topic, that's cold chain. I will like to share my screen now. Okay, is everyone able to see the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I shall start. So hi again, this is Aditi. I'm the consultancy development head at ACR Project Consultants, as Nilanjana rightly introed about me. I would be talking on this very important topic, introduction to cold chain and its relevance in the current lockdown scenario. So we as an ACR has been doing cold chain projects across the country for almost 50 years now. We're completing our 50th year this year actually, and we've done more than 500 projects. So we kind of have a know-how of the different types of cold chain projects that go on in the country and how relevant it is to India, how the market is growing, what are the kind of opportunities in India that cold chain has, and how much is the government supporting this sector, and what is the kind of growth that we're looking at in this sector. And that is what I'm here to convey to you today. So the agenda of this talk would be, first I'll go through I'll start with the basics of what really is cold chain and what are its components. Then I'll go into the scenario of cold chain in India. And then finally, I'll talk about how cold chain would have helped or is actually helping today's scenario, even in terms of COVID and even in terms of this lockdown, how cold chain has been so important in this entire situation. Okay, so starting with what exactly is cold chain. So before we start, I would like to tell you that cold chain is mainly into food as well as pharma. We will be covering the cold chain topic mostly from the food angle, where we'll be talking about fruits, vegetables, meat, and all the food items that come into cold chain. Pharma is a totally different sector. Of course, very important part. Cold chain is a very important part of pharma when you talk of medicines, vaccines, and all. But it's a total sector and all, and we could go that into a separate session. It take like another session for it. So we mainly talk about food. So talking about cold chain and food, um, when we talk of cold chain, it basically comprises of the entire chain from farm, that is the farmer, to fork, that is the consumer, where the food is transported in a safe, hygienic, and refrigeration assisted manner. Okay, what this means is, in simple words, it means that at the point that the food is harvested and to the point that the food is on the table of the consumer, we have to make sure that the transport of the food is maintained at particular design conditions. The transport, storage at various conditions until it reaches the consumer is maintained at particular temperature, particular humidity, particular design conditions, so that the quality of food is maintained and the life of the food is enhanced. So this entire process is basically called cold chain. It's not exactly new to India. We've been fairly established in cold chain in the milk and milk product segments, that's the dairy segment, uh, in around some in our 1940s or 50s. We had the white revolution, where a few of you might know that milk and milk product became a very important part of our industry and of our life. And a few years down the line, now we are seeing the green revolution, where green is also getting a lot of importance, and there is a lot of trust being put into increasing the quality and storage of the green food. So yeah, milk has always been a very important part, and cold chain has always been existing in that field. In terms of fish, meat, and poultry products, to some extent, we have been there. It's growing. Of course, you would all agree that the demand for these products is also growing, and hence the cold chain for these products is also growing. But there is huge potential. Again, say for example, if we just talk of fish, how many people today really do enjoy that fresh fish that you get near the coastal lines? In India, if you go anywhere away from the coast, you would mostly be having the baha fish. That's the baha basa fish that you get mainly in the south in southeast countries. And that is what I mean. Anywhere you go in terms of the five-star hotels or resorts, that's the kind of fish that is served. But what about a local fish, the fish that we so love, like salmons or halwa, pomfret, which are our which are our Indian fish. That is something that is not still readily available to people in India. So you can understand the potential that is there in cold chain, where all these products, with the help of cold chain, will be able to reach a consumer's home. So yes, in terms of fish, meat, and poultry, we are there, but we are growing, and there's a huge opportunity in that sector. And in terms of fruits and vegetables, again, we are developing, we're growing, and humongous opportunity. I'll cover this in more detail as we go forward. This is just a pipeline that we've tried to show, where we're seeing that from the left hand side, this is how the food gets into the pipeline, where from the from the farmer's end, the food comes in terms of grains, or in terms of pulses, fruits, vegetables. It is first sorted, then it is packed, it is stored, transported, and then finally it is marketed. This is in short the entire pipeline. But what in this slide, what I'm trying to show is the amount of food that is wasted in the entire pipeline, and the amount of food that is not stored properly or not transported properly in the right design conditions, because of which we end up wasting food, or we end up reducing the quantity of food by the time it comes to the consumer. And this is one of the biggest problems that India faces today. India is one of the biggest producers of food, whether we talk of fruits or vegetables, whether we talk of milk, dairy. I'll go into the numbers in the slides later, and you'll be surprised to see the amount of food that we generate. But you'll also be surprised to see that the amount of food that we waste is not funny. And the wastage happens at every level, because we don't have the right skills to handle food properly. We don't have the right facilities to store the food properly. We don't have the right intentions. We don't have the right demand coming from people in terms of in terms of the payment that they're able to do for the kind of quality that they want. So because of all these these problems, you we have basically have wastage of food at every point. And cold chain, the one of the main aim of cold chain is to reduce this food wastage. The other aim being in improving the quality and the life of the food that is being served to the consumer. So these are the different routes in cold chain. This is a summary slide, and this is exactly what I'm going to cover in the rest of the session as well. But here I'll just quickly go through the 6 routes that we have, and as we go forward, I'll dwell more into this. So before we start on these 6 routes, I believe a lot of people from ISHRE are from the HVAC segment, and this is where I take a minute to differentiate between what is the importance of designing an HVAC system versus what is the importance of designing a cold chain system. So in HVAC, the main product, or whom are we designing really the entire system for, or whom is it running for? The entire system is running for human being. And what is the comfort level of a human being? What are the comfort temperatures of a human being? So there's a set range, between say 18 to 24, 25, 26 degrees is the kind of range that humans are comfortable in when we talk of HVAC. Of course, you are more expert. Some of you might be more experts in that and would have better figures, but that's the kind of range that we know of. And a particular humidity level that humans are used to and are comfortable in. And that's pretty much fixed. It can change based on a number of people in the room, or there are other factors like how many times the door is opening, closing, and all those other things, outside conditions and all. But pretty much that is what we did. That is the main crux, and we're designing for that. But when you come to cold chain, when you're talking of food, there is so much variety in food. Every fruit, every vegetable, every meat that we're talking of, every dairy segment, dairy food is different. And that means every food requires a different temperature and humidity to be maintained for its life to grow, or for its quality to be maintained. So this makes the entire designing and storage that much complex, because that means we have to make sure that the right kind of food goes into the right kind of design settings and is stored at the right kind of design temperatures and humidities. And we also need to make sure that foods are not mixed in terms of odor. So in a lot of different types of food, there is mixing of odor, there is mixing of other properties that can happen. Assuming it's a little liquid food, you would have a mixing of those on the surface. So you have to make sure that you store those the different types of food in different settings, in different chambers, in different conditions. So that makes the whole cold chain system a little more complex and a little more specialized to that kind of food item. And that is what we see in these 6 routes. So the first route, that's route A, is where we are dealing with fruits and vegetables. And what happens in this is, the produce is harvested from the farmer. It comes to a pack house or a processing area, which processing area and a pack house, which basically contains of first a hall or an area where we sort and grade and pack the product into, say, cartons or gunny bags, that's Burmese. Then the packed food is transported to a cold storage. Cold storage is nothing but a refrigerated chamber. And then from the cold storage, it is transported to the distribution center or the supermarket. So this is the simplest form of route that we follow for a fruits and vegetables. Coming to the next route, that's route B, that is specifically followed for products which require pre-cooling. Now, pre-cooling is a concept where as soon as the product is harvested, it is cooled down very quickly to low levels of temperature. So say in around 6 to 8 hours, mostly 6 hours, it is cooled down from room temperature. That is what the food comes in, or the grains or the pulses that come in. That is around, say, 24 degrees. It is cooled down to almost 6 to 8 degrees, depending on the kind of produce that comes into the pre-cooling chamber. And then it follows the entire process of storage, transport, and then going to the distribution center. So this pre-cooling is done for very specific kind of products. It does not apply to all kind of products. So it applies to grapes, strawberries, so very specific kind of fruits. But this pre-cooling helps in improving the life of a product to a much larger extent, and it helps in improving the quality of the product. Third route, that's route C, is controlled atmosphere storage. This is again specifically used for specific fruits like apples, pears, and lately it has been we've started using it for oranges. So in this, what we do is we maintain the temperature, humidity, of course, but along with that, we also maintain the carbon dioxide levels, nitrogen levels in the chamber. And this helps in improving quality and life of these specific fruits like apples, pears. The fourth route is the freezing, freezing or the frozen food route. So this is where we're talking of very specific products which require negative temperature storage. So of course, meat comes in this segment, but there's also frozen corn, frozen peas, these products which require storage in negative temperature. So in this kind of fruit, what happens is the product, as soon as it comes to the processing center and it is cleaned and processed and packed, it goes to a freezing facility where there are very specific freezing plants. There's either an IQF or a spiral freezer or a plate freezer. So there are different types of freezing plants that are again defined for different types of products. Basically, it depends on the size of the product, and also it depends on the water content of the product. So, so there are different types of freezing plants or freezing mechanisms that are available based on the product. And as soon as the product is then frozen, then we have to make sure that we maintain the entire chain or entire cold chain from that point to the retailer or the consumer in the frozen state. So this actually ends up being a lot more energy intensive and a lot more skill based process, where we have to make sure that the temperature and the humidity is maintained at a negative temperature for frozen products until it is really sold and goes to the consumer. So the fifth route, that is route E, is for processed, packed, and frozen food, which basically is frozen, again packed and frozen at the source itself, and then it is only transported through refrigerated transport, where we actually need reefer transport, something called as reefer transport, and this applies for products like ice creams, butter, wherein as soon as the product is processed and packaged, it is packaged itself in the frozen state, and then all we have to make sure is the entire route that it follows is frozen. And the sixth route we're talking of is specifically for confectioneries, chocolates, which don't require very low temperatures, but anywhere between 20 to 25 degrees Celsius. But that's the kind of temperature that we have to maintain for these kind of confectioneries. And that means that the facilities that they go through are either air conditioned or ventilated storages. It's not exactly a cold storage, but that kind of temperature and humidity needs to be maintained for confectionaries and these kind of products. So what we'll do is, in all these 6 routes, we've kind of tried to cover all the kind of food segments that are there, and we'll go through all those routes one by one, and I'll talk more about each one of them. These are different type of cold components that we just spoke of. Okay, again coming to the route A, that is cold storages, bulk or multi-purpose. So as I said, route A is mainly used for fruits and vegetables. So you have fresh fruits, vegetables, dry fruits, spices, pulses, milk products, beans, jaggery, as well as potatoes, chilies, raisins. All these products go through cold storages or the route A, where there is a little amount of processing, packaging, and then cold storage, and then transport of the product. Now, in this, what is the main difference is the type of cold storage that is used. Now, there are mainly 2 types of cold storages. One is the bulk cold store, and the other is the multi-purpose cold store. In a bulk cold store, these are huge cold storages of the capacity of 6,000, 7,000 metric ton. 1 metric ton is 1,000 kg. All of you, I'm sure, are aware of. And we're talking of 7,000, 8,000 metric tons of cold storages. And every chamber in this cold storage can have a capacity of storage of almost 1,000 to 1,200 metric tons. Now, these storages are used mainly for potatoes, chilies, raisins, and so this has been predominantly been there in India. I mean, most of you would know that India has a huge production of potatoes. Almost 70% of our cold storages, even today, are potato cold storages. That is how it had traditionally started. And in fact, some 20 to 30 years before today, almost 90% of cold storages were potato cold storages. And because it's mainly grown in the east and north, all these cold storages were situated pretty much near the north and east side of the country. But as we went forward, we started storing different types of food produced in the cold storage, and that's where the concept of multi-purpose cold storage came in. So in multi-purpose cold storages, we have smaller chambers of say 200, 250 to 300 metric ton, and different types of produce get stored, processed and stored in these different types of chambers. Now, again, why would we really require these different chambers? Because as I said, every food, every product that comes in requires very specific design temperature and humidity settings. And that means every chamber has to be maintained at various design conditions. And compartmentalizing these into smaller chambers helps in better trading, better stocking up, and helps the cold storage owner keeps different types of products in the cold storage. So that is why multi-purpose chambers are smaller, much smaller in size, and they are generally found near the consuming centers, that is in cities or in the urban markets. Whereas bulk storage, as I said, are found more near the farming or the producing centers. So chilies, for example, chilies, raisins, you'll find a lot of them in South India, where a lot of raisins and chilies are grown. This is just a picture of how cold storages have changed, over the past few years. On the left, you have a typical conventional multi-floor structure, which is manually loaded. Produces there in gunny bags, and they stacked one over the other. Again, it's still followed. I mean, it's not like these cold storages don't exist. It depends on the produce also. So especially when you're talking of onions, potatoes, and bulk cold storages, you still have these kind of facilities in place. On the right, you have modern multi-purpose, multi-floor structured cold storage. So here we use racking is used, internally in the chambers. A lot of use of racks and pallets is done, and everything is mechanized. You would, if you see in the picture on the bottom on the right, you will see a mechanized loading of the pallets. So you have different types of material handling equipments which help you in loading, unloading of pallets, where a person doesn't need to touch the product at all. And there's a lot of technology that has come into all of this. We have barcoding systems. There is IoT coming in. There is a little use of blockchain that is being introduced. Of course, a lot of these systems are now connected on cloud. So you have monitoring of these chambers, of the produce, of the product that is there. All the data of that goes onto the cloud, and it's easily available on mobile. So a lot of technology is coming in. There's a lot of modernization happening in these cold storages. Of course, if we talk of India with respect to UK or US, I would honestly say that we're still 15 years behind in terms of technology, mainly because the scale that we work at is very different. In India, the cold storage site, the biggest cold storage is say 30,000 metric tons, which is Savla cold storage of Mumbai, if you would know. And that too is segregated in different types. Some of the chambers are bulk, some of the chambers are multi-purpose, some of them are racking based. So it's an aggregation of all of that. But that's for anyone in the UK or US, that would still be a small or a medium kind of cold storage. So that it'll take time, before we reach that level and we reach that technology and we reach the volumes. But we're growing. and we'll be growing in the right direction. Okay, so route B, as I said, is the pre-cooling route. It is a process of accelerated cooling immediately after harvesting, and it applies to specific items like grapes, strawberries, pomegranates, also flowers. And pre-cooling is basically cooling of the product within a short time after harvesting. Lots of units, huge number of units are established in Maharashtra, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, UP, MP, and other states. Other states are also following suit. And basically, the grading packing in these units is either manual or mechanized. So flour is a segment that I really talk about every time, and it really amazes me how that sector fits into this. So if you all know about Valentine's Day, right? And we know that the maximum amount of flour sale happens during Valentine's Day. And if you just read a few articles about how the flower market works, based on when Valentine's Day comes, they back calculate on the amount, on the month in which they should be sowing flowers, especially in the European countries. And based on that, they sow those flowers, they grow them, they harvest them, and then they pack them such that they reach the right markets, especially in India, US, Middle East, Southeast Asian countries. They make sure that the flowers reach at the time during the Valentine's Day. So that entire market runs on how people really buy flowers during that day. And pre-cooling of these flowers really helps in increasing the quality and the shelf life and the freshness of these flowers. So that is the kind of boost that the right technology can give to a particular product. So for us, say for example in India, if we don't end up doing so much of pre-cooling for flowers, and that is why maybe our flowers don't end up going to places other than cities, other than a few cities in the state. I'm not even sure if they go outside the state, but that's pretty much the market that our flowers end up having. But if you can imagine, if the right kind of pre-cooling or the right kind of technology is given to the flowers as soon as they are harvested, we would be in a much better position to export our flowers as well. Just like Netherlands export their tulips and their main lilies and tulips outside Netherlands. We also have the potential to do that. So pre-cooling is a very important part in increasing the shelf life and quality of a product. This is a typical layout of a pack house. On the right hand side, if you see the right hand side bottom, you have a receiving dock. Oh, sorry. So this is where the product comes in and it is unloaded. Then it goes into the grading packing hall, where it is graded into different grades, as in the higher quality ones are separated from the lower for the A, B, and C kind of quality product produced, and then they are packed. So this entire area can be either it can be fully mechanized or it can be totally manual. So of course, if you can imagine, if it's manual, we need a lot of manpower, which is in abundance in India, and that helps actually. But a lot of people also go in for mechanized facilities, which help in producing more, obviously, and improving the quality. And the less manhandling that happens to the produce, the better quality you get out of it. So a lot of pack houses do mechanization in this. Again, as I said, different, since the food product that we're dealing with is so different, every time. The mechanized lines are also very different. So you have a specific line for, say, vegetables, like those gourds, bottle gourds, bitter gourds, those kind of gourds which are like elongated vegetables have a different kind of line. Round fruit and vegetables have different kinds of lines. If you're specifically talking of pomegranates, you have to remove the head of the pomegranate, so they need a different kind of line. If you're talking of peas, corn, again, you can imagine you have to remove the outer cover for peas. For corn, it's about de-seeding those small corn parts from the bunch. So every product requires a different kind of processing, and based on that, the mechanization also changes. So from the grading sorting hall, once it is packed into different boxes, It then goes into the pre-cooling room, depending on whether the product is suited for pre-cooling or not, where in 6 hours, the temperature of the product is quickly dropped down to around 4 degrees Celsius. And then it goes into the cold storage, where the right temperature and humidity is then maintained for the product. And then as and when there is demand from the market, the product is removed from the cold storage, it goes to the dispatch dock, and then it is transported to the distribution centers. These photographs show a typical pack house and a pre-cooling plant. This is shown for mangoes. A picture of another pack house in South. You can see that in the language used is South Indian. This is in Karnataka. Karnataka government actually is doing a great job in building the right kind of facilities for the right kind of produce that grows in Karnataka. So they're pushing a lot of pack houses now over there. Earlier, the thrust of government was mainly on building cold storages, and that's why you would have, if you are into this segment and if you're aware of the subsidies and the push that government has been giving, you would have realized that a lot of subsidies and a lot of push was given specifically for cold storages. Earlier the thrust was from moving cold storage investments from bulk to multi-purpose. So a lot of subsidy was given for multi-purpose cold storages. Now the thrust is actually moving from developing only the cold storages to developing the entire chain. So that is why today government subsidies are such that they give subsidies to projects which have pack houses or processing areas at the farmers in, and they have cold storages and distribution hubs at the consumer end or the urban areas. So they generally prefer projects which have both, which are a mix of both these, and that helps in developing the entire chain, right from farm to consumer for that particular product. And as I was saying, Karnataka government is doing a great job in setting up the right kind of pack houses near the farming centers. Route C is the controlled atmosphere storage. As I said, it's specifically used for apples, pears, plums. And where are apples grown really in India? Pretty much in North India, right? I mean, Kashmir side. So a lot of controlled CA stores or controlled atmosphere stores are found in North. The point or the main point of a CA store is that the produce needs to reach the CA chamber within 48 hours of harvest. And once it goes into the chamber, it needs to be locked and stored and kept away from any kind of infiltration until there is a demand from the market. So it could be, so actually CA stores end up improving the life of apples and increasing it to almost 6 to 8 months. So once the apples go into a chamber, it can stay as fresh and as healthy in the chamber until the entire batch is removed, which could be 6 months or 8 months down the line. And by then, it might be an off-season period where the apples would get a much better rate. So CA stores really help in getting the right kind of remuneration for the apples that we have. It's although it's growing, it's still in infancy in India, and it is estimated that the present capacity is around 50,000 metric tons. It has a huge potential for growth. CA stores. This is a picture of a CA store in Rai, that's near Delhi. On the left, you will see it from the outside. It's a huge store of around 12,000 metric ton. And on the right, you see an anteroom or a passage between the CA store chambers. So on both sides of the passage, you see those big doors. They open into CA store chambers. So every chamber is generally of the size of 250 metric ton, 250 metric ton. And as I said, once the produce goes in, these chambers are locked. They just have like a window in the door for people to monitor what is going inside the chamber. And when there is a demand from the market, the entire lot of 250 metric ton goes out and it goes to the market. Frozen foods. I don't need to tell you all that the demand for frozen foods is growing so much in India that the kind of facilities that are providing storage for frozen foods we're falling short of those facilities. So frozen foods, basically the items include green peas, corn, okra, mixed vegetables. There are sliced vegetables as well, tomato puree, mango pulp, mango slices, dices, pineapple slices, fish, meat, poultry products, dairy products, cooked food. Because of the urbanization, because of nuclear families, because of people working late hours, everyone wants ready to eat, ready to cook kind of food nowadays. And frozen food is one segment that helps them, you know, get that food, which is quick food. And a lot of people have this thing in mind that frozen food is not really fresh and we're actually dealing with stale food, but that is not the concept. In fact, if the food, as soon as it is created, whether it is cooked or non-cooked or whichever form you want to store it, if it is frozen in the right way, as soon as it is made, and if it is kept frozen in that particular state until it reaches the consumer, you're actually dealing with pretty fresh food, which was I mean, the life of that is just from the time it was cooked to the time it was frozen. That's the kind of life that it has served. And after that, once it is in frozen state, what we're doing is actually we are stopping the growth of any bacteria in that food. There is no oxygen being uh, exchanged with the food, and there is no bacterial growth that happens in the food. So by the time the food comes to your doorstep, it is actually as fresh as what it was when it was cooked. In fact, in terms of fresh food, what we're doing is we are storing it in conditions where it degrades by the time it comes to our house, because it is in contact with oxygen and bacteria. So that's a kind of myth that people have, that frozen food is stale food, uh, but there's a lot of education that is happening in this area. If you've heard of GCCA, that's the Global Cold Chain Alliance, they have also been taking huge seminars on this, along with ACR, along with ISHRE, on how frozen foods are the way to go forward. This is a typical fish processing plant. You see that they are cleaning all the fish and grading them before they're being packed. Roti is, as I said, specifically for butter, cheese, ice creams, these kind of items, where the transport throughout has to be in reefer vans, and we have to make sure that nowhere there is a lapse in the temperature settings, because um, even if the temperature of that product goes up even for the smallest amount of time, we are reducing the quality of the product to a very high extent. So if you ever had ice creams which taste a little powdery, you would know that this ice cream has been melted somewhere before, in the cold chain, and by the time it's reaching you, somewhere it has been refrozen again. So sometimes there are these particles, ice particles, that you will feel when you're eating them, sometimes too powdery. That's when you know that the cold chain has not been maintained properly. So for these kind of products where they're frozen as soon as they're made, it's very important to maintain the right cold chain throughout. And for this, I was saying that a lot of technology is coming in. We have a lot of IoT sensors that are being introduced into reefers now, which reefers are the refrigerated transports, which help in monitoring the quality or how design temperatures are maintained throughout the transport. So they could either be in the storage, the sensors could be in the storage, as well as they could be on the reefers, and the final retailer can demand that if the temperature and humidity has been maintained, throughout, then only I'll buy this product. And slowly, in fact, we should reach a stage where consumers also start demanding this. But right now, we are still a price sensitive market, so India is still okay to pay a little less for a product which is not as high quality as what you really want to be. So, but we slowly reach there. We have our buying potential is increasing. Our awareness in terms of quality and health is increasing, and our people are demanding better products, better storages, and better systems, and better transparency from food segment altogether. This is a line of butter. It just shows a picture of butter processing, and down below is an ice cream slab. Ice cream ice cream cold storage are very interesting to see. I mean, the smell of nice ice cream everywhere. Ventilated storage, that's route F. This is for specific items like chocolates, confectionaries, products, tobacco, actually products and tobacco. Huge segment. I mean, I don't want to tell you the market that we have for tobacco and chocolates and all these confectionaries. So these don't require specifically very low temperatures. They can be stored in ventilated storages or AC processing storages. This is a picture of how it looks from inside. If it's racked and it's kept neatly and kept well, entire thing is mechanized. The typical facility, a special kind of facility called irradiation. It is used for onions, and it is one of the facilities also used for mangoes. So this, so for example, if I specifically talk of mangoes, we export a lot of mangoes, so in fact, the kind of mangoes that we end up eating in India are generally the lower quality, because the best quality ones all get exported. In fact, that's not how it happened in COVID this year, and we ended up eating a lot of good mangoes because the transport facilities were not working across countries, and the export went down a little. But basically, what I'm trying to come to is every country outside India demands a particular type of processing on mangoes before they import them. So US or United States kind of countries demand that the mangoes are irradiated. There are UK and Europe have a different kind of treatment that they demand from mangoes. Say if you go to Japan, they want hot water treatment to be done on mangoes. So these are specific facilities which help you in increasing the life of those produce further and make them export ready. The last is food distribution center. So distribution center is where actually all of this comes together. They're generally situated near consuming centers or the urban areas, and I'll show you this picture of how it all comes together. You would have all these facilities in that distribution center. These are generally set up by big players like say Reliance or the bigger ones who have all kind of business segments into their portfolio. So you have a raw material and receipt storage block. You have cleaning, drying, grading, packing, pre-cooling block. You have processing and freezing also done in the same setup. So that means you have cold storage as well as frozen food storage in the same setup. Then you have a dry goods store, or maybe a store which is a ventilated store for confectionaries. And then you have these docks for dispatch. So basically, it's a center where you're dealing with all kinds of food products. And this is just a picture of the pipeline that I showed off, where right kind of facilities are built at every point, and if the right kind of handling of food and right kind of storage of food is done at every point, then what you're talking of is a much better repaired pipeline where food wastage can be reduced to a much higher extent. Okay, so how is all of this relevant in Indian cold chain scenario? Where are we in terms of the cold chain, and how are we growing? This is the current scenario, slightly old figures, but this will give you a picture of where we stand really. Milk, we produce 130 million metric ton. We are number 1 in the world in terms of producing milk. In terms of fruits and vegetables, 280 million metric ton. We are number 2 in the world. In spite of having second largest population in the world, we produce so much food in terms of fruits and vegetables that we can feed our population, as well as we have the potential to export a lot of this outside India. All we need to make sure is we reduce the food wastage, we improve the quality of the food, and we make sure as soon as the food is harvested, it goes into the right processing and the right technology, so that the shelf life of the food and the quality of food is improved. In terms of fish, we are at 13 million metric ton. We are number 6 in the world. Again, this, as I mentioned earlier, fish is an industry which has huge potential in India and outside India. Then this awesome fish that we get in India, it needs to be it needs to go places. It needs to go to inner parts of India. It needs to go outside India. And for all that, developing that cold chain is very important. Meat, we are the largest cattle population in the world. Poultry, again, one of the largest in the world. Ready-to-eat foods, we are growing at a very high rate. In fact, in the past, in this COVID situation, in the past few months, there has been a lot of change in the way food industry has been operating. We all know that restaurants and pubs and all these places have been on a low, and home deliveries are increasing. But ready-to-eat food segments are something that have seen a very good market in the past few months. And there are a lot of people entering in this field newly. We see that a lot of funding is happening in this field. A lot of startups are coming up in this field. So this field is growing at a very high rate. The current capacity of cold storage and food processing, for cold storages, only 9% of the perishable production actually gets stored. So we have a huge potential in terms of increasing the amount of cold storages. We have around 6,300 numbers of cold storages where the capacity is 33 million metric ton. In terms of food processing, only 5 to 6% of food that is harvested is actually processed. And if you've been following Modi government for the even in the last term as well as in this term, they have an entire thrust on food, on the agriculture sector. And the Ministry of Food Processing, the MOFPI, has come out with various schemes for improving this food processing sector. There is foreign direct investment that has been opened up, and the government is also giving a lot of subsidies for improving food processing infrastructure. And the final aim, of course, is to make sure that the consumer gets good quality food in good prices. But the aim also is to doubling the farmer's income, making sure farmer gets his price for what he's really producing and putting his hard work in. This is a table that was shared by NCCD. NCCD is a national body for cold chain. It's showing the gap in current infrastructure and the kind of infrastructure where we need to reach. So in pack houses, the infrastructure requirement is 70,080, and right now, this is a 2015 report. It's a 5-year-old report, but at least in 2015, there were only 249 pack houses. So there was almost a gap of 99.6%. In reefer vehicles, there is a gap of 85%. That's the kind of demand that we're talking of. In cold storages, it's the gap is lesser right now because we have a decent amount of facilities that are being built in this segment as compared to the other cold chain infrastructure facilities. And there is ripening chambers, which are mainly used for bananas and mangoes. There also there's a huge demand of around almost 91%. A zone-wise distribution of how cold storages are spread across India. Almost 50% of those are in north, 30% are in east, and the rest are in the rest of the country. So these are the drivers for growth in India. Changing lifestyle, small nucleus families, pretty much what why people want ready-to-eat foods more. There is a lot of interest by national and international food chains in India. You would be knowing of Walmart coming in, and this Walmart Flipkart deal that is happening lately. A lot of other international food chains are showing interest. In fact, last year our Ministry of Food Processing minister, Mrs. Badal, she visited a lot of countries outside India. She went to a lot of European countries, a lot of South Asian countries to pitch our facilities, our infrastructure, and to give opportunities to international food chains to come and collaborate with Indian farmers and Indian FPOs and Indian industry. So that is a segment that is going to go up. Food processing is again considered as a sunrise sector, as I mentioned. The priority sector for government is agriculture and food processing, with lots of government initiatives for cold chain development, untapped market for cold chain, and for refrigerated transport. Reefer transport is again a segment that is growing at a big level. Yeah. These are some books if anyone wants to quickly refer to like a guide or a quick update on cold storage. Then there is a book called Cold Storage Basics, which is written by Arvind Surendra. It is published in 5 Indian languages, and it has also gone international and published in Turkish language. It's a small, guide kind of a book, which will give you a quick insight on what cold storage is all about and how can it be built. And of course, if anyone really wants to go into detail, then there is ASHRAE's Guide on Sustainable Refrigerated Facilities and Refrigerated Systems. Of course, ASHRAE would have many more books other than these. These are just 2 books which we've seen, in demand lately. Last but not least, I'll quickly cover how cold chain and COVID really go together and how cold chain has really helped actually in this scenario. So, of course, although we know we're getting out of that situation, things started moving and they've started coming back to normalcy, but it is still another 6 to 8 months before we're still there. And I would just like to highlight the challenges that we faced during that period and how cold chain helped us in that period. So the challenges faced were unreliable supply of unreliable supply of food, because there was so much. Even the workers working on the farm level, on the processing areas level, on the industry level, no one was really working at full capacity, and that is why the demand, the supply that was there at consuming centers and distribution centers was very shaky. There was a lot of dependency on support services like transport, lesser staff, as I said, operating at varied levels, sealing of district borders, reduced commercial demand. A lot of hotels and pubs were not working. People obviously not allowed to step out of the house. That's why commercial demand was very low. Closure of maintenance shops. So even if there were reefers to operate, if there were some reefers which were not which had technical problems, there was no one to fix them. And the last mile delivery issues were there due to people like Swiggy having problems, or containment zones and all. So in spite of all these challenges, if you realize, there has not been a dire situation in India where there has been no food on people's plates. If you just go and read about Middle East countries or a lot of countries in Southeast Asia and all, people have suffered from a lot of food availability problems in terms of fruits, vegetables. People have been living on pulses, bread, and dry products. But that has not. I mean, India has not been in that dire situation, because in the background, our government has worked a lot on making sure that the cold chain for all these produce was active. Of course, it's not only cold chain; the entire agri chain, whether it's cold or whether it's ambient, the entire chain was kept active in terms of sanitizing it, in terms of making sure that essential services are given privileges, and power is constantly given to cold storages, and all the kind of facilities that are required for cold storages to run and to operate were given by the government. And that is why we were in a position where even if the produce was low, the supply was supply within the entire chain was intermittent. We at the consumer level, it wasn't. We never came to a situation where we went hungry or we didn't get food at all. These are some slides that I'll skip basically, because they talk of how cold chain, how can we really get out of this scenario, and how can what kind of sanitization needs and all are there. But I don't think it's relevant right now to this audience. Yeah. So kind of getting all of this together, I'll try to conclude the entire session by saying that refrigeration and cold chain are indispensable parts of today's civilization. The growth is essential. There are challenges on environment and energy front. This is one point that I didn't touch upon, but a very important point. cold chain, I mean HVAC, I'm sure you all are aware, it's pretty similar to that. Cold chain also ends up consuming a lot of energy, and the gases that are used in cold chain facilities can be hazardous to environment. That is why a lot of research also goes on in that, and a lot of equipment, new equipment keeps getting released, new gases keep getting released. Yeah, so there is a lot of thrust on the ODP, that's ozone depletion, and the global warming, the GWP potential. And even bodies like United Nations work on these fronts to make sure that we end up using the right kind of gases in cold chain. The proper designing is the key to ensure a good refrigerated facility. So every facility can be designed such that it can, give you the desired temperature and the desired humidity. But what is the kind of power that it's really using? How is it really optimal? Is it really making use the right equipment to make sure that at the least amount of power we're getting the maximum output out of it? So all these parts are important for proper designing, and we as a part of the industry have to make sure that the cold chain facilities are designed properly, and they are using optimal amount of energy. Sustainable green or refrigeration and allied technologies need to be promoted. As Nilanjana mentioned in her introduction, we work on a global level on promoting green cold chain, and green cold chain basically comprises of looking at cold chain facilities from all angles to make sure that the least amount of energy is used in the cold chain facilities. And to conclude it, cold chain is a great industry to get into if you're not there, of course, and especially considering the kind of returns and benefits available, it's a huge opportunity for everyone to get into this field, and it's growing and it will keep growing over the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you, Aditi. A very vast subject, and summarized in, I would say, 50 minutes or 1 hour. No doubt, I personally being in a cold chain industry for a long time, I know how big this subject is, and definitely if the cold chain is perfectly put across the length and breadth of the country, I always believe that no citizen of the country would go hungry. Right, so that's something which is very important. So now I'll open the floor for the questions. If anybody has got any questions, please unmute yourself and share.